Hello, my friends. It's Indiana Holmes for another night of story time. Tonight we read once again from Grimm's Fairy Tales, the story they titled The Little Red Cap, which some of you may know as Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a very dear little girl who was loved by everyone who looked at her, but most of all by her grandmother, and there was nothing that she would not have given to the child. Once she gave her a little cap of red velvet, which suited her so well that she would never wear anything else, so she was always called Little Red Cap. One day her mother said to her, "Come, Little Red Cap, here is a piece of cake and a bottle of wine. Take them to your grandmother. She is ill and weak, and they will do her good. Set out before it gets too hot, and when you are going, walk nicely and quietly, and do not run off the path, or you may fall and break the bottle, and then your grandmother will be getting nothing. And when you go into her room, don't forget to say, 'Good morning,' and don't peep into every corner before you do it." "I will take great care," said Little Red Cap to her mother, and gave her hand on it. The grandmother lived out in the wood, half a league from the village, and just as Little Red Cap entered the wood, a wolf met her. Red Cap did not know what a wicked creature he was, and was not at all afraid of him. "Good day, Little Red Cap," said he. "Thank you kindly, wolf." "Whither away so early, Little Red Cap?" "To my grandmother's." "What have you got in your apron?" "Cake and wine. Yesterday was baking day, so poor sick grandmother is to have something good to make her stronger." "Where does your grandmother live, Little Red Cap?" "Oh, a good quarter of a league farther on in the wood. Her house stands under 3 large oak trees. The nut trees are just below. You surely must know it," replied Little Red Cap. The wolf thought to himself, "What a tender young creature! What a nice plump mouthful! She will be better to eat than the old woman. I must act craftily, so as to catch both." So he walked for a short time by the side of Little Red Cap, and then he said, "See, Little Red Cap, how pretty the flowers are about here. Why do you not look around? I believe, too, that you do not hear how sweetly the little birds are singing. You walk gravely along as if you were going to school, while everything else out here in the wood is merry." Little Red Cap raised her eyes, and when she saw the sunbeams dancing here and there through the trees, and pretty flowers growing everywhere, she thought, "Suppose I take grandmother a fresh nosegay. That would please her too. It is so early in the day that I shall still get there in good time." And so she ran from the path into the wood to look for flowers. And whenever she had picked one, she fancied that she saw a still prettier one further on, and ran after it, and so got deeper and deeper into the wood. Meanwhile, the wolf ran straight to grandmother's house and knocked on the door. "Who is there?" "Little Red Cap," replied the wolf. "She is bringing cake and wine. Open the door." "Lift the latch," called out grandmother. "I am too weak and cannot get up." The wolf lifted the latch. The door sprang open, and without saying a word, he went straight to grandmother's bed and devoured her. Then he put on her clothes, dressed himself in her cap, laid himself in bed, and drew the curtains. Little Red Cap, however, had been running about picking flowers, and when she had gathered so many that she could carry no more, she remembered her grandmother and set out on the way to see her. She was surprised to find the cottage door standing open, and when she went into the room, she had such a strange feeling that she said to herself, "Oh dear, how uneasy I feel today. And at other times I like being with grandmother so much." She called out, "Good morning," but received no answer. So she went to the bed and drew back the curtains. There lay her grandmother, with her cap pulled far over her face and looking very strange. "Oh, grandmother," she said, "what big ears you have." "The better to hear you with, my child," was the reply. "But grandmother, what big eyes you have," she said. "The better to see you with, my dear." "But grandmother, what large hands you have, the better to hug you with." "Oh, but grandmother, what a terrible big mouth you have, the better to eat you with." And scarcely had the wolf said this, then with one bound he was out of bed and swallowed up Redcap. When the wolf had appeased his appetite, he lay down again in the bed, fell asleep, and began to snore very loud. The huntsman was just passing the house and thought to himself, "How the old woman is snoring! I must see if she wants anything." So he went into the room, and when he came to see the bed, he saw that the wolf was lying in it. "Do I find you here, you old sinner?" said he. "I have long sought you." Then, just as he was going to fire at him, it occurred to him that the wolf might have devoured the grandmother, and that she might still be saved. So he did not fire, but he took a pair of scissors and began to cut open the stomach of the sleeping wolf. When he had made 2 snips, he saw the little red cap shining, and then he made 2 snips more, and the little cap sprang out. The little girl sprang with it, crying, "Ah, how frightened I have been! How dark it was inside the wolf!" And after that, the aged grandmother came out alive also, but scarcely able to breathe. Redcap, however, quickly fetched great stones with which they filled the wolf's belly, and when he awoke, he wanted to run away, but the stones were so heavy that he collapsed at once and fell dead. Then all 3 were delighted. The huntsman drew off the wolf's skin and went home with it. The grandmother ate the cake and drank the wine which Redcap had brought, and revived, but Redcap thought to herself, "As long as I live, I will never by myself leave the path to run into the wood when my mother has forbidden me to do so." It also related that once, when Redcap was again taking cakes to the old grandmother, another wolf spoke to her and tried to entice her from the path. Redcap, however, was on her guard and went straight forward on her way and told her grandmother that she had met the wolf and that he had said good morning to her, but with such a wicked look in his eyes that if they had not been on the public road, she was certain he would have eaten her up. "Well," said the grandmother, "we will shut the door that he may not come in." Soon afterwards, the wolf knocked and cried, "Open the door, grandmother. I am Little Redcap, and bringing you some cakes." But they did not speak or open the door. So the graybeard stole twice or thrice round the house, and at last jumped on the roof, intending to wait until Redcap went home in the evening, and then steal after her and devour her in the darkness. But the grandmother saw what was in his thoughts. In front of the house was a great stone trough. So she said to the child, "Take the pail, Redcap. I made some sausages yesterday, so carry the water in which I boiled them to the trough." Redcap carried until the great trough was quite full. Then the smell of the sausages reached the wolf, and he sniffed and peeped down, and at last stretched his neck so far that he could no longer keep his footing and began to slip, and slipped down from the roof straight into the great trough and was drowned. But Redcap went joyously home, and no one ever did anything to harm her again. This has been Indiana Holmes for another story time. Thank you for joining me tonight. Love you all. Good night. Hello, my friends. It's Indiana Holmes, and it is story time once more. We continue reading Bram Stoker's Dracula, and tonight we read chapter 24. Dr. Seward's phonograph, diary, spoken by Van Helsing. This to Jonathan Harker. You are to stay with your dear Madam Mina. We shall go to make our search, if I can call it so, for it is not search, but knowing, and we seek confirmation only. But do you stay and take care of her today? This your best and most holiest office. This day nothing can find him here. Let me tell you that so you will know that what we foreknow already, for I have to tell them. He, our enemy, have gone away. He have gone back to his castle in Transylvania. I know it so well, as if a great hand of fire wrote it on a wall. We have to prepare for this in some way, and that the last box of earth was ready to ship somewheres. For this he took the money. For this he hurried at the last, lest we catch him before the sun goes down. It was his last hope, save that he might hide in the tomb that he thinks poor Miss Lucy is, being as he thought like him. Keep an open mind. But there was not time. When that failed, he must make straight for his last resource, his last earth-worked box, I might say. Say, did I wish double entendre? He is clever. Oh, so clever. He knows that his game here was finished, and so he decided to go back home. He found a ship going by the route he came, and he will go in it. We must go off now to find what that ship is and where it goes, and whither it is bound soon or later. When we have discovered that, we should come back and tell all to you. Then we will comfort you and poor dear Madam Mina with new hope, for it will be hope when you think of it over. That is all not lost. This very creature that we pursue, he takes hundreds of years to get so far as London, and yet in one day, when we know of the disposal of him, we will drive him out. He is finite, though he is powerful to do much harm and suffers not as we do, but we are strong, each in our own purpose, and we are all more strong together. Take heart afresh, dear husband of Madam Mina. This battle is but just begun, and in the end we shall win. So sure as that God sits on high to watch over his children, therefore be of much comfort till we return. Dr. Van Helsing. Jonathan Harker's Journal, October 4th. When I read Mina Helsing's message in the phonograph, the poor girl brightened up considerably. Already the certainty that the Count is out of the country has given her comfort, and comfort is strength to her. For my own part, now that this horrible danger is not face to face with us, it seems almost impossible to believe in it. Even my own terrible experiences in Castle Dracula seem like a long-forgotten dream. Here in the crisp autumn air, in the bright sunlight. Alas, how can I disbelieve? In the midst of my own thought, my eye fell on the red scar on my poor darling's white forehead. Whilst that lasts, there can be no disbelief, and afterwards the very memory of it will keep faith crystal clear. Mina and I fear to be idle. So We have been over all the diaries again and again. Somehow, although the reality seems greater each time, the pain and fear seems less. There is something of a guiding purpose manifest throughout which is comforting. Mina says that perhaps we are the instruments of ultimate good. It may be. I shall try to think as she does. We have never spoken to each other yet of the future. It is better to wait till we see the professor and the others after their investigations. The day is running by more quickly than I ever thought a day could run from me again. It is now 3 o'clock. Mina Harker's Journal, October 5th, 5 p.m. Our meeting for report. Present, Professor Van Helsing, Lord Godalming, Dr. Seward, Mr. Quincy Morris, Jonathan Harker, Mina Harker. Dr. Van Helsing described what steps were taken during the day to discover on what boat and whither bound Count Dracula made his escape. As I knew that he wanted to get back to Transylvania, I felt sure that he must go by the Danube mouth or somewhere in the Black Sea, since by that way he came. It was a dreary blank that was before us. Omne ignotum pro magnifico. And so with heavy hearts, we start to find what ships leave for the Black Sea last night. He was in sailing ship, since Madam Mina tells of sails being set, but these not so important as to go in your list of shipping dates in the Times. And so we go, by suggestion of Lord Godalming, to your lords, where are note of all ships that sail, however so small. There we find that only one Black Sea-bound ship go without the tide. She is the Tsarina Catherine, and she sails from Doolittle's Wharf for Varna, and thence on to other ports up the Danube. So, said I, this is the ship whereupon is the Count. So off we go to Doolittle's Wharf, and there we find a man in an office of wood so small that the man looks bigger than the office. From him we inquire of the goings of the Tsarina Catherine. We swear much, he swear much, and he red-faced and loud of voice, but he a good fellow after all the same. And when Quincy gave him something from his pocket, which crackled as he rolled it up, and put it into a small bag, which he gave hidden deep in his clothing, he still was a better fellow and a humble servant to us. He came with us and asked many men who were rough and hot, these better fellows too, when they have been no more thirsty. They said much of blood and bloom, and of others when I comprehended not, though I guessed what they meant. But nevertheless they told us all things which we wanted to know. They made us known to them among them, how last afternoon at about 5 o'clock a man came in such a hurry, a tall man, thin and pale, with a high nose and teeth so white, and eyes that seemed to be burning, that he was all dressed in black, except that he had a hat of straw, which suited him not of the time, that he scattered his money in the making of quick inquiry to what ship sails for the Black Sea and for where. Some took him to the office and then to the ship where he would go to board, but halt at the shore end of a gangplank and ask the captain to come with him. The captain came, and when told that he will be well paid, and though he sweared much at first, he agreed to the terms. Then the thin man went to go tell someone where a horse and a cart could be hired. And he went there, and soon he came again, himself driving the cart, on which a great box. This he himself lifted down, though it took several to put it on the truck for the ship. He gave much talk to the captain as to how and where his box was to be placed, but the captain did not like it, and sweared at him in many tongues, and told him that if he liked he could come and see where it should be. But he said no, that he came not yet, for that he had much to do. Whereupon the captain told him that he had better be quick with blood, for that his ship will leave the place of blood before the turn of the tide with blood. Then the thin man smiled and said of course he would be there, and he would be fit and ready, but he will not be surprised if he would go so soon. The captain sweared again, polyglot, and the thin man made him bow and thank him, and said that he will go so far as not to intrude on his kindness, but as to come aboard before the sailing. Finally, the captain, before the red than ever, and in the most tongues, told him that he doesn't want no Frenchmen with bloom upon them, and also with blood in his ship, with blood on her also. And so, after asking where there might be close at hand a ship where he might purchase a ship forms, he departed. No one knew where he went, or in bloomin' well cared, as they said, for they had something else to think of, well, with blood again. For it soon became apparent to all that the Czarina Catherine would not sail as was expected. A thin mist began to creep up from the river, and it grew and grew, till soon a dense fog enveloped the ship and all around her. The captain swore polyglot, very polyglot, polyglot, and bloom and blood, but he could do nothing. The water rose and rose, and he began to fear that he would lose the tide altogether. He was in no friendly mood, when just at full tide the thin man came up, and the gangplank again came down, and asked to see where his box had been stowed. Then the captain replied that he wished that he and his box, old and much bloom and blood, were in hell. But the thin man did not be offended, and he went down with the mate and saw where it was, and came up and stood a while on the deck in the fog. He must have come off by himself, for none noticed him. Indeed, they thought not of him, for soon the fog began to melt away, and all was clear again. My friends, the thirst and the language that was of bloom and blood laughed, as they told how the captain's swears exceeded even his usual polyglot, and was more than ever full of picturesques when, on questioning of other mariners who were on the movement up and down the river that hour, had found that few of them had seen of any fog at all, except where it lay round the wharf. However, the ship went out on the ebb of tide, and was doubtless by the morning far down the river's mouth. She was by then, when they told us, well out at sea. And so, my dear Madam Mina, it is that we have to rest for a time, for our enemy is on the sea, with the fog at his command, and on his way to the Danube mouth. To sail a ship takes time. Go she never so quick, and when she starts, we go on land more quick, and we meet him there. Our best hope is to come upon him when in the box between sunrise and sunset, for then he can make no struggle, and we may deal with him as we should. There are days for us in which we can make ready for our plan. We know all about where he goes, for he has seen the owner of the ship, who has shown us invoices and all papers that can be. The box we seek is to be laden in Varna, and to be given to an agent, one Aristix, who will be there present his credentials. And so a merchant friend will have done his part. When he asked if there be anything wrong, for that so he can telegraph and have inquiry be made at Varna, we said no, for what was to be done is not for the police or for customs. It must be done by us alone, in our own way. When Dr. Van Helsing had done speaking, I asked him if he were certain that the Count had remained on board the ship. He replied, "We have the best proof of that, your own evidence. When the hypnotic trance this morning, I asked him again if it were really necessary that they should pursue the Count, for I dread Jonathan leaving me alone, and I know that he would surely go if the others went." He answered in growing passion, at first quietly. As he went on, however, he grew more angry and more forceful, till in the end we could not but see wherein was at least some of that personal dominance which made him so long a master amongst men. Yes, it is necessary, for your sake in the first place, and then for the sake of humanity. This monster has done much harm already, in the narrow scope where he finds himself, and in the short time when as yet he was only as a body groping his so small measure in darkness, and not knowing. All this have I told these others. You, my dear Madam Mina, will learn it in the phonograph of my friend John, and in that of your husband. I have told them how the measure of leaving his own barren land, barren of peoples, and coming to a new land where life of man teems till there are like a multitude of standing corn, was the work of centuries, were another of the undead like him, to try to do what he has done. Perhaps not all the centuries of the world that have been or that will be could aid him. With this, all the forces of nature that are occult and deep and strong must have worked together in some wondrous way, the very place where he had been alive, undead for all these centuries, in full of strangeness and geographic and chemical world. There are deep caverns and fissures that reach none, I know whither. There have been volcanoes, some of whose openings still send out waters of strange properties, and gases that kill or make to vilify. Doubtless there is something magnetic or electric in some of these combinations of occult forces which work for physical life in strange ways, and to himself were from the first come great qualities. In a hard and warlike time he was celebrated, that he would have more iron nerve, more subtle brain, more brave heart than any man, and in him some vital principle has had in some strange way found their utmost. And as his body was kept strong and growing and thriving, so did his brain grow too. All of this without that diabolic aid, which is surely to him, for it yields to the powers that come from and are symbolic of good. And now this is what he is to us. He has infected you. Oh, my dear, forgive me, my dear, that I must say such things, but it is for good of you that I speak. He infects you in such a wise way that even if he does no more, you have only to live your old own sweet way, and so in time, death, which is of man's common lot, and with God's sanction, shall make you like him. This must not be. We have sworn together that it must not. You must not become as him, a vampire. Thus, we, ministers of God's own wish, that the world and men for whom his Son died will not be given over to monsters whose very existence would defame him. We have allowed us to redeem one soul already, and we must go out of this old Knights of Cross to redeem more. Like them, we shall travel towards the sunrise, and like them, if we fall, and we fall in good cause, he paused and said, but will not the Count take his rebuff wisely, since he has been driven from England? Will he not avoid it, as a tiger does the village from which he has been hunted? Aha, he said, your smile of the tiger's good for me, and I shall adopt him, your man-eater, as they of India call the tiger, who has once tasted blood of the human, cares no more for the other prey, but prowls unceasingly till he gets him. This that we hunt from our village is a tiger too, a man-eater, and he never ceases to prowl. Nay, in himself he is not one to retire and stay afar. In his life, his living life, he goes over the Turkey frontier and attacks his enemy on his own ground. He be beaten back, but did he stay? No, he came again and again and again. Look at his persistence and endurance. With a child brain that was to him, he has long since conceived the idea of coming to a great city. What does he do? He finds out the place of all the world's most promise for him. Then he deliberately sets himself down to prepare for the task. He finds in patience just how his strength and what his powers are. He studies the new tongues and he learns the new social life, new environment of old ways, the politics, the law, the finance, the science, the habit of the new land and the new people who have come to be since he was. His glimpse that he is brave had whet his appetite only for the inkeen of his desire. Nay, it helps him to grow as to his brain, for it all proves to him how right he was at the first in his surmises. He has done this alone, all alone, from a ruined tomb in a forgotten land. What more may he not do when the greater world of thought is open to him? He that can smile at death, as we know him, who can flourish in the midst of diseases that kill off whole peoples. Oh, in one was to come from God and not the devil. What a force for good might he not be in this world of old of ours? But we are pledged to set the world free. Our toil must be in silence, our efforts all in secret. For in this enlightened age, when men believe not even what they see, the doubting of wise men would be his greatest strength. It would be at once his sheath and his armor and his weapons to destroy us, his enemies, who are willing to peril even our own souls for the safety of one we love, for the good of mankind, and for the honor and glory of God. After a general discussion, it was determined that for tonight nothing be definitely settled, that we should all sleep on the facts and try to think out the proper conclusions. Tomorrow, at breakfast, we are all to meet again, and after making our conclusions known to one another, we shall decide on some definite cause of action. I feel wonderful peace and rest tonight. It is if some haunting presence were removed from me, perhaps. My surmise was not finished, could not be, for I caught sight in the mirror of the red mark upon my forehead, and I knew that I was still unclean. Dr. Seward's Diary, October 5th. We all rose early, and I think that our sleep did much for each of us. When we met at early breakfast, there was more general cheerfulness than at any other time that we had experienced in this endeavor. It is really wonderful how much resilience there is in human nature. Let us not be obstructed in our cause. No matter what, be we removed in any way, even by death, we will fly back to our first principles of hope and enjoyment. More than once, as we sat around the table, my eyes opened in wonder whether the whole of the past days had not been a dream. It was only when I caught sight of the red blotch on Mrs. Harker's forehead that I was brought back to reality. Even now, when I am gravely revolving this matter and remembering all its elements, it is almost impossible to realize that the cause of all our trouble is still in existence. Even Mrs. Harker seems to lose sight of her trouble for whole spells. It is only now and again when something recalls it to her to remind her that she thinks of her terrible scar. We are to meet here in my study in half an hour and decide of our course of action. I see only one immediate difficulty. I know it by instinct rather than reason. We shall all have to speak frankly, and yet I fear that in some mysterious way poor Mina Harker's tongue is tied. I know that she forms conclusions of her own, and that from all that has been, I can guess how brilliant and how true they must be, but she will not or cannot give them utterance. I have been mentioned, and I have mentioned this to Van Helsing, and he and I are to talk it over when we are alone. I suppose it is some of that horrid poison which has got into her veins beginning to work. The Count had his own purposes when he gave her what Van Helsing called the vampire's baptism of blood. Well, there may be a poison that distills itself out of the good things. In an age when the existence of ptomaines is a mystery, we should not wonder at anything. One thing I know, that if my instinct be true regarding poor Mrs. Harker's silences, then there is terrible difficulty, in unknown danger in the works before us. The same power that compels her silence may compel her speech. I dare not think further, for I should, in my thoughts, dishonor a noble woman. Van Helsing is coming to my study a little before the others. I shall try to open the subject with him. Later on, when Professor came in, we talked over the state of things. I could see that he had something on his mind which he wanted to say, but felt some hesitancy about broaching the subject. After beating about the bush a little, he suddenly said, "Friend John, there is something that you and I must talk of alone, just at the first rate of it anyway. Later we may have to tell the others and take them into our confidence." Then he stopped, so waited, and he went on. "Madam Mina, our poor, dear Madam Mina, is changing." A cold shiver ran through me. to find my worst fears thus endorsed. And then Van Helsing continued. With sad experience of Miss Lucy, we must this time be warned before things go too far. Our task is now, in reality, more difficult than ever, and this new trouble makes every hour of the dirtiest and direst importance. I can see the characteristics of the vampire coming in her face. It is now but very, very slight, but it is to be seen if we have eyes to notice without to prejudge. Her teeth are somewhat sharper, and at times her eyes are more hard. But these are not all. There are to her the silence, now often, as so it was with Miss Lucy. She did not speak, even when she wrote that she wished to be known later. Now my fear is this: if it be that she can, by our hypnotic trance, tell what the Count can see and hear, is it not more true that he who has had hypnotized her first, and who has had drink of her very blood, and made her drink of his, should, if he will, compel her mind to disclose to him that what she knows? And I nodded in acquiescence, and he went on. Then what we must do is to prevent this. We must keep her in an ignorant state of our intentions, and so she cannot tell what she knows of our plans. This is a painful task, oh, so painful that in heartbreaking of me I think of it. But it must be, even if it breaks our hearts to do so. When today we meet, I must tell her that for reasons which we will not speak, she must not be more of our company and counsel, but must stay away, but be simply guarded by us. He wiped his forehead, which he had broken out in profuse perspiration, at the thought of the pain which he might have to inflict upon the poor soul already tortured. I knew that it would be some sort of comfort to him if I told him that I also had come to the same conclusion, for at any rate it would take away the pain of doubt. I told him, and the effect was as I expected. It is now close to the time of our general gathering. Van Helsing has gone away to prepare for the meeting and his purpose in that part of it. I really believe his purpose is to be able to pray alone. Later, at the very outset of our meeting, a great personal relief was experienced by both Van Helsing and myself. Mrs. Harker had sent a message by her husband to say that she would join us. Oh, no, not actually join us now, not at present, as she thought it was better that we should be free to discuss our movements without her presence at the present, and not to embarrass us. The professor and I looked at each other for an instant, and somehow we both seemed relieved. For my own part, I thought that if Mrs. Harker realized the danger herself, it was much pain as well as much danger averted. Under the circumstances, we agreed, by a questioning look and answer, with finger on lip, to preserve silence in our suspicions until we should have been able to confer alone again. We went at once into our plan of campaign. Van Helsing roughly put the facts before us first. The Tsarina Catherine left the Thames yesterday morning. It will take her at the quickest speed she has ever made at least 3 weeks to reach Varna, but we can travel overland at the same pace and place and arrive at that place maybe in 3 days, as we can travel quicker by land. Now, if we are all allowed 2 days less for the ship's voyage, owing to such weather influences as we know that the Count can bring to bear, and if we allow a whole day and a night for any delays which may occur to us, then we have a margin of nearly 2 weeks. Thus, in order to be quite safe, we must leave here on the 17th at the latest. Then we shall at any rate be in Varna a day before the ship arrives, and be able to make such preparations as may be necessary. Of course, we shall all go armed, and armed against evil things, spiritual as well as physical. Here Quincey Morris added, I understand that the Count comes from a wolf country, and it may be that he shall get there before us. I propose that we add Winchesters to our armament. I have a kind of belief in a Winchester when there are any trouble ahead of that sort around that we may encounter. Do you remember, Art, when we had that pack of wolves around us at Tobolsk? What wouldn't we have given for a repeater, each a piece in our hands, for our safety? Good advice, said Van Helsing. Winchesters it shall be. Quincy's head is level at all times, but most so when there is a hunt. Through my metaphor, be more dishonored to science than wolves be of danger to man. In the meantime, we can do nothing here, and as I think that Varna is not familiar to any of us, why not go there the more sooner? It is as long as there is a wait to be there, we should wait. Tonight and tomorrow we can get ready, and then, if all be well, we four can set out on our journey. We four? Said Harker interrogatively, looking from one to another of us. Of course, answered the professor quickly. You must remain to take care of your so sweet wife, Madam Mina. Harker was silent for a while, and then he said in a hollow voice, Let us talk of that part and of it in the morning. I want to consult with Mina. I thought that now was the time for Van Helsing to warn him not to disclose our plans to her. But he took no notice. I looked at him significantly and coughed. For answer, he put his finger to his lips and turned away. Jonathan Harker's Journal, October 5th, afternoon. For some time after our meeting this morning, I could not think. The new phrases and phases of things leave my mind in a state of wonder which allows no room for active thought. Mina's determination not to take any part in the discussion set me thinking, and as I could not argue the matter with her, I could only guess. I am as far as ever from a solution now. The way the others received it, too puzzled for me. The last time we talked of the subject, we agreed that there was to be no more concealment of anything amongst us. Mina is sleeping now, calmly and sweetly like a child. Her lips are curved and her face beams with happiness. Thank God there are such moments still for her. Later. How strange it all is. I sat watching Mina's happy sleep and came as near to being happy myself as I suppose I shall ever be. As evening drew on, the earth took its shadows from the sun sinking lower. The silence, the room grew more and more solemn to me. All at once, Mina opened her eyes and looking at me tenderly said, Jonathan, I want you to promise me something on your word of honor, a promise made to me, but made wholly in God's hearing, and not to be broken, though I should go down on my knees and implore you with bitter tears. Quick, you must make it to me at once. Mina said, a promise like that I cannot make at once. I may have no right to make it. But, dear one, she said, such spiritual intensity that her eyes were like pole stars. It is I who wish it, and it is not for myself. You can ask Dr. Van Helsing if I am not right. If he disagrees, you may do as you will. Nay, if you all agree, later you are absolved from the promise. The promise, I said, and for the moment she looked supremely happy, though to me all happiness for her was denied by the scar on her forehead. And then she said, "Promise me that you will not tell me anything of the plans formed for the campaign against the Count. Not my word or interference or implication, not at any time whilst this remains to me." And she solemnly pointed to the scar. I saw that she was in earnest and said solemnly, "I promise." And as I said it, I felt that from that distant and instant a door had opened and shut between us. Later, midnight, Mina has been bright and cheerful all evening, so much that all the rest seemed to take courage. As if infected somewhat with her gaiety, as a result, even I myself felt as if the pall of gloom which weighs us down were somewhat lifted. We all retired early. Mina is now sleeping like a little child. It is a wonderful thing that her faculty of sleep remains to her in the midst of her terrible trouble. Thank God for it, for then at least she can forget her care. Perhaps her example may affect me as her gaiety did tonight. I shall try it. Oh, for dreamless sleep. October 6th. Another surprise. Mina woke me early, about the same time as yesterday, and asked me to bring Dr. Van Helsing. I thought it was another occasion for hypnotism, but without question went for the professor. He had evidently expected such a call. I found him dressed and in his room. His door was ajar, so he could hear the coming of the opening door on our room. He came at once. As he passed into the room, he asked Mina if the others might come too. "No," she said quite simply. "It will not be necessary. You can tell them just as well. I must go with you on your journey." Dr. Van Helsing was startled as I was. After a moment, paused and asked, "But why?" "You must take me with you. I am safer with you, and you shall be safer too." "But why, dear Madam Mina, why? You know that your safety is our solemnest duty. You go into danger to which you are, or may be, more liable than any of us. From circumstances, things that have been." He paused, embarrassed. As she replied, she raised her finger and pointed to her forehead. "I know that this is why I must go. I can tell you, whilst the sun is coming up, I may not be able again. I know that when the Count wills me, I must go. I know that if he tells me to come in secret, I must come by wile or trickery, by any device or hoodwink, even to Jonathan." God saw the look that she turned on me as she spoke. And if there be indeed a recording angel, that look is noted to her everlasting honor. I could only clasp my hand. I could not speak my emotion, as was too great a fear, even the relief of tears. She went on, "You men are brave and strong. You are strong in your numbers, for that can defy that which would break down the human endurance of one who would had to guard me. Besides, I may be of service, since you can hypnotize me and learn of which that I know myself, and then relate to you." Dr. Van Helsing said very gravely, "Madam Mina, you are, as always, most wise. You shall come with us, and together we shall do that which we go forth to achieve. When he had heard her spoken, Mina's long spell of silence made me look at her. She had fallen back on her pillow asleep. She did not even wake when I had pulled up the blind and let the sunlight, which flooded the room, come in. Van Helsing motioned to me to come with him quietly. We went to see his room, and within a minute Lord Godalming, Dr. Seward, and Mr. Morris were with us also. He told them what Mina had said and went on. In the morning, we shall leave for Varna. We have now to deal with a new factor, Madam Mina. Oh, but her soul is true. It is to her an agony to tell us so much as she has done. But it is most right, and we are warned in time. There must be no chance, and no time must be lost. And in Varna we must be ready to act the instant when the ship arrives. What shall we do exactly? Asked Mr. Morris laconically. The professor paused before replying. We shall at first board that ship. Then, when we have identified the box, we shall place a branch of a wild rose on it. This we shall fasten, for when it is there, none can emerge from the box. So at least says the superstition. And to the superstition must we trust at first. It was man's faith in the early, and it has its root in faith still. Then, when we get the opportunity that we seek, when none are near to see, we shall open the box, and all will be well. I shall not wait for any opportunity, said Morris. When I see the box, I shall open it and destroy the monster, though there were 1,000 men looking on. And if I am to be wiped out for it for the next moment, I gasped and grasped his hand instinctively and found it as firm as a piece of steel. I think he understood my look. I hope he did. Good boy, said Dr. Van Helsing. Brave boy, Quincy said in a manner. God bless him for it, my child. Believe me, none of us shall lag behind or pause from any fear. I do but what I say, what I meant to say and do, I must do. But indeed, we cannot say what we shall do. There are many things which may happen, and their ways in which ends are so various, and that very moment, until that very moment, we may not say. We shall all be armed in all ways, and when the time for the end has come, our effort shall not be lacking. Now let us today put all our affairs in order. Let all things which touch all others dear to us and who all depend upon us be complete, for none of us can tell what or when or how the end may be. As for me, my own affairs are regulate, and as for that, I have nothing else to do. I shall go and make arrangements for the travel. I shall have all the tickets and so forth for our journey. There was nothing further to be said, and we parted. I shall now settle up all my affairs of earth, and shall be ready for whatever may come. Later. It is all done. My will is made and complete. Mina, if she survives, my sole heir. If it should not be so, then the others who have been so good to us shall have the remainder. It is now drawing towards the sunset. Mina's uneasiness calls my attention to it. I am sure that there is something on her mind, which the time of exact sunset will reveal. These occasions are becoming harrowing times for us all. For each sunrise and sunset opens up some new danger, some new pain, which, however may be in God's will, be means to a good end. I write all these things in the diary, since my darling must not hear them now. But if it may be that she can see them again, then they shall be ready. She is calling to me now. And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 24 of Dracula. Thank you for joining me tonight, my friends. Have a good evening, and love to you all. Good night.
Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.